What's up, Rebel Nation? It's Cam Wicker from the Rebel Walk, co-host of the podcast that you're tuned into right now, the Rebel Talk. Today's episode, Zach and I start off talking about men's basketball and their recent Sweet 16 berth, where they'll be heading to Atlanta next weekend. In the middle of the episode, we were joined by Nya Stewart, a writer for the Rebel Walk and former college basketball player, to talk about their Sweet 16 berth heading to Spokane this weekend and just the overall thoughts of the weekend on Team 50. At the end of the episode, we end it with talking about the sweep of Missouri for Ole Miss baseball this weekend and previewing the Florida series to come. You can skip through the episode and watch whatever section you like, or you can watch the whole thing through. Leave a like, comment on this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel to keep up with all the Rebel Talk videos, and with that being said, enjoy the show. Welcome back, Rebel fans. You're listening to another episode of the Rebel Talk presented by the Rebel Walk. I'm Cam Wicker, and as always, I'm here with Zach Mareth. And today we're here to talk a little bit of Ole Miss sports, really from the past weekend. It's a big weekend in Ole Miss sports, Zach. Two Sweet 16 bursts, a sweep for baseball, a couple things happening for football as well. Pretty big weekend. I mean, you can see on the bottom of the screen there with the ticker, just little highlights I got going across there at the bottom. If we don't cover any of those, which I'm sure we'll get to those other than football really today. But really, just overall great weekend for Zach. Just your overall thoughts on the weekend in general.
Yeah, it was really fun just to be an Ole Miss student, but also to be an Ole Miss fan for, the graduates and all the people who are just cheering for Ole Miss in general. Chris Beard, man. Coach, all I got to say is this is March. I mean, I feel like that applies more to the men's. We didn't expect them to pummel Iowa State. And the women's also, I wouldn't say we expected them to beat Baylor, but I would say there was more of a likelihood that happened. They took care of business as well. And then baseball goes up to Missouri and proves why they're a top 25 team, handling a really, I don't want to say bad, but they're lacking some talent over there in Missouri. But again, win's a win, man. And we're going to dive into it a little bit about men's hoops. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. Like, there were 5 minutes left, and this has never happened to me watching an Ole Miss game. In my head, I thought it's actually over. Like, there's nothing Iowa State can do. They are getting dominated. They're not as athletic. Even though they're taller, they're definitely not nowhere near as quick, and they don't move the ball as well as us. It was domination, Cam. But going into that game a little bit, they took a 13-5 lead, and I'm texting all my friends. I'm like, are we cooked? Like, what's going on, guys? But then look at that, man. Chris Beard, timeout. Some adjustments are made, and Ole Miss comes out, and they really never look back from that point on. One of the big things for me that I want to touch on before giving it back to you, Cam, 76% from the free throw line. That's a stat that resonates because, if we take you back to a couple months earlier in the season when Davon Barnes is shooting those free throws at the end of the game against Texas A&M, it loses Ole Miss that game. A&M goes down, hits a ridiculous shot. We're all leaving stunned. You fast forward a couple months, the free throws look miles better, and especially in late game situations. They did it against Carolina. They did it against Iowa State. They've done it in the SEC tournament. But there's a lot of guys you can get the ball to make free throws and put games away, which gives me a lot of confidence going up against Michigan State here. But those are some of my early thoughts, Cam. I want to give it back to you just to, your overall opinion on the state of this team and how this weekend went.
Absolutely. Like Zach said, that great free throw shooting from this team is yesterday for them in the win against Iowa State. They went 9 for 9 in the first half. And like Zach said, down the stretch, it's been better on the free throw line for Ole Miss. Same for the women, too. I mean, KK Dean said 6 straight in that win against in that win in the other day against Baylor. Down the stretch there for Ole Miss, it seems like Ole Miss basketball is where Chris Beard and Coach Yo want these teams to be. It's definitely where Keith Carter wants this program to be. Before I hop into a little bit of just some recaps on the weekend, I just want to just all call to Ole Miss fans. If you're someone like me who's been watching Ole Miss throughout the years, you know that there hasn't been a lot of success across all the boards on sports at the same time. This is a different generation of Ole Miss sports that we're living in now, and I know fans tend to get upset a lot, and you have your opinions and just things like that, and you want to grab about the players and the coaches. In the past, Ole Miss didn't expect to win games. Now you're in games and you're expecting to win. And like Zach said, you're on Sunday against Iowa State. You're looking around like, what's happening? It's Ole Miss becoming an elite program. That's what's happening. I mean, you're up by 20 late in the game, and you're guaranteeing that you're winning that game late in it. So this is an Ole Miss program right now, all across the board of sports, that the best we're seeing just in a while. I don't think I've ever seen Ole Miss sports in general be this good all around. Moving on a little bit just into the recaps of the game, like Zach said, good win over UNC. Good start to that game against UNC.
Yeah, man.
Ole Miss was winning that game by 18 led by 18 at the break, led by 20 later in the second half. It seemed like Ole Miss was shooting lights out. I mean, they was 5 for 5 in the first half for Ole Miss. They shot 7 for 13 from 3. And then in the second half, an 11-0 run for UNC made it a 4-point game. Ole Miss went 5 straight minutes without scoring. It seemed like maybe the atmosphere of, not being in that situation for some of these guys on this Ole Miss team, maybe it got in their head a little bit, but just cool, calm, and collected. Padula comes in, kind of just went down the stretch like he's been doing all year for Ole Miss. And it seemed like an Ole Miss team that was willing to bang out the last minutes of the game and win the game. I mean, we've been seeing that over and over again late in the year from these Ole Miss teams that are just scratching and clawing for a win. And I think deeper into this thing, that's what you're going to need. You're going to need an Ole Miss team that's going to be scratching and clawing for a win, especially when you play Michigan State. And if you get past them, Michigan or Auburn, that's not going to be any easier, Zach.
No, man, and you mentioned it, but playing in those late game situations, you can almost recall it from every single SEC game, even past the SEC. Let's go earlier against BYU, against Purdue in that early year tournament, and then you can go through essentially every SEC game. Like I said, Mississippi State in Starkville, not the one in Oxford, which is, we're not going to talk about that right now, but Alabama, Tennessee, LSU, and South Carolina were both close finishes. Even that Auburn game in the SEC tournament, Arkansas in the SEC tournament, these are games where Ole Miss has been through it, man. They've gone on the road against those tough crowds. They've done it against neutral crowd environments, which they've now done it again for another weekend here. They did it in Nashville against Arkansas, and they went to Milwaukee and did it, where it sounded like there were a lot of Carolina fans because, let's be honest, those Blue Bloods have a lot of fans who didn't go to school there. So there were probably a lot of local people in Chicago and Milwaukee who didn't go to North Carolina, but for some reason they're the fan of that team. Just happens that way, right? But Ole Miss, man, now you get to play in Atlanta where you should have a little bit of home court advantage. I know Michigan State is a very prominent program with a lot of pride, and they travel well. But just by, basic geography, if I'm looking at a map, Oxford's about a 6-hour or less drive from Atlanta. And a lot of the graduates live in cities like Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee, Atlanta, Nashville, cities that are close and can hopefully give Ole Miss a little bit of an edge going against MSU there. But again, Cam, this Iowa State game, they did what the team was designed to do. 5 players in double digits. You have Chris Beard coaching in March Madness where he thrives. Like, everything's coming together, man. And with this momentum, I don't think there's a team in the country that Ole Miss can't compete with, let alone beat. And that starts with Michigan State. They have a couple big men. One kid, I got to find out their names, but we're early in the scouting report. They got a kid who's 7 feet. Got a kid who's 6'11". They don't play a ton, but they feel like more defensive impact guys, which I think matches up well for Ole Miss because where we see them struggle is against your dominant 6'10", 6'11" players. You look at Janai Broom, the kid on Tennessee down low had a great game. Those teams, those dominant teams that are really special, typically have a guy in their front court who can do it all. But, Michigan State's very similar to UNC in the fact that they're very guard heavy and they relied a lot on guys like Jace Richardson, who are going to try and make those 3-pointers. But before we even get there, Cam, I just want to soak this in. I mean, what a weekend it's been for Ole Miss hoops. The last thing I have on this game was, did you hear the announcer call us Mississippi State?
Yeah. I did. That was a rough one. I mean, it seemed I've been seeing a lot of stuff just throughout social media, just about Ole Miss making it. That was one of the weirdest things that I've seen all weekend. I also saw some Mississippi State message boards saying that Keith Carter and the SEC shouldn't have allowed Chris Beard to be hired at Ole Miss. So a little bit of soft on the Mississippi State's message boards throughout this weekend as well. But yeah, like Zach said, Ole Miss playing the 2 seed Michigan State in Atlanta this Friday at 6 p.m. local time. That's Central Time over here. That'll be 7 p.m. in Atlanta. I think Auburn got the late tip-off in that Atlanta bracket as well, so it's closer to 10 p.m. in Atlanta for Auburn's kickoff. So, I mean, could be a sleepy doozy one, that one for Michigan Auburn late in the afternoon there in Atlanta. But yeah, like Zach said, I circled the matchups for Ole Miss against Michigan State on this too. And the matchups that's what it's all about when it comes to March. We said in the last podcast, Zach, the matchups is what it's all about. It's a game of runs, and if you can get the right matchups, this Ole Miss team is very athletic. They showed it against Iowa State. They showed it at times against UNC. I thought they showed it really a lot against Iowa State. They showed the switching on defense. They got exposed a bit against UNC on the switching at times. It seemed like late in the game they tried to go back to the zone defense and not switch as much, but they went back to the switching and slowed UNC down a bit to win that game. The switching was on point the entire game, at least 35 minutes against Iowa State. It just seemed like you had three guys on the ball at some point on the big man, and then all of a sudden he passes it out, and you got other guys with their hands up, switching over and getting to their rotations on defense. It was a very outgoing game for Ole Miss as far as just them getting to the ball on defense. And what I liked the most was just creating turnovers against the Iowa State team that doesn't create turnovers, and they also create a lot of turnovers. Ole Miss did have three crucial turnovers in the beginning of that game when they went down 13-5 before going on that big 17-2 run. But Chris Beard said it in the press conference afterwards. After that, Ole Miss played the basketball they know how to play, and that's take care of the ball like they've done all year. And I think that was just a big turning point in this game. Like I said, Ole Miss goes on that 17-2 run. That was a 6-minute run during that game, anchored by defense and just three-pointers all over the place. It just seems like it was falling all over the place for the three-pointers at times for Ole Miss. I mean, Malik Dia had one that friendly bounced in for his second one. Malik Dia hit a step back from way downtown mid-range in that game as well. But it was the Malik Dia and Sean Padula show in the first half for Ole Miss. Everyone kind of tagged along in the second half. Jamin Brakefield, Matt Morrell was hitting shots that we hadn't really seen him hit all year for Ole Miss, and it was just really big for Ole Miss down the stretch. Juju Murray, I mean, was kind of underlooked in this game, had 11 points, was that fifth scorer in double digits for Ole Miss, but he played that point guard role really well. I mean, Padula with the 8 assists obviously gets the highlight there with the 20 points as well, but Juju Murray in that game, I thought at times was really playing the point guard role really well for Ole Miss, and that's kind of what you've been wanting out of him all year. It seems like Ole Miss has kind of figured out that you don't have to just get him out of the game because he's, I don't want to say a liability on defense, but the mismatches are there at times for Juju. But it seems like, I mean, at times Dre Davis is getting over there to help him. Jamin Brakefield's getting over there to help him. Diaz getting over there to help him. When the mismatch is there for Juju, the team goes and helps. And that's what this Ole Miss team has been having to center around late in March. I mean, early in March and going on into March this postseason. And I think that's going to be big for them. For the Michigan State series, top 15 rebounding team. They're second in the Big Ten in rebounding. Ole Miss has beat a really good rebounding team. They beat Alabama earlier in the SEC play. Alabama leads the country in rebounding. So Ole Miss can beat these teams. The mismatches are going to be there at times, like I said, but Ole Miss is capable of beating these teams. Then also I wanted to highlight, if you watch the end of that, I know Michigan State and New Mexico State ended shortly after that Ole Miss game. Some people may not get over, maybe not have been able to switch over and look at the end of that one. But Tom Izzo did not seem pleased when the reporter was like, "You got to face Ole Miss." Tom Izzo kind of made a face and knew right away that he said Chris Beard's team are going to come at you tooth and nails and going to play defense. So, what are your thoughts on that, Zach? Just Tom Izzo's thoughts on the end of that game?
I think Tom Izzo is one of the best college basketball coaches of all time, and he knows damn well this is a guy that he played against in the Final Four in 2019, and he lost. Chris Beard is a different type of energy. If you're around him, if you watch him coach a basketball game, he's always seemingly relaxed, sitting down for a concerning amount of the game. I don't know how he's that relaxed on the bench, but he has a calmness and a presence in March that he can go out and beat anyone. And when Ole Miss is playing at this level of pure domination against one of the best teams in the Big 12 in Iowa State, I don't think there's any question that they can take down a relatively inconsistent Michigan State team. Now, Michigan State's played incredible down their last kind of stretch of conference games. They didn't show up in their conference tournament, lost to Wisconsin. We saw what Wisconsin did against BYU in the tournament. I hate saying this. I don't want to take anything against New Mexico and Rick Pitino's son who coaches that team. I think, is it Richard Pitino?
Yeah.
That's great. Even better. But at the end of the day, that's a mid-major school, a 10 seed, let alone almost upsetting Michigan State. taking them to the wire. If you watch that game, man, it wasn't over until about a minute 30 left. New Mexico was in it the whole time. And the last thing I have on them is they started really slow in both first halves in March Madness. So if Ole Miss can try and jump out and get to that comfortable lead at halftime, they've proven they can hang with that lead towards the end of the game. And it's something you got to look for and aim for if you're Chris Beard. But there's no doubt, if I was Tom Izzo and a coach who beat me in the Final Four was coming up and they're the lower seed and it's March, I'm damn terrified, Cam. What do you think, bro?
Absolutely. I mean, like Zach said, I mean, it seems like Izzo wasn't happy getting ready to play this Ole Miss team. It's going to be a mismatch probably for Purdue at times on the defensive end. It seems like the guard play in that New Mexico Michigan State game was not good for Michigan State at times. So I mean, if Purdue can get going on the outside for Ole Miss like he has been all March, that's going to be big for for Ole Miss's confidence. Ole Miss has been a great team to start first halves pretty much all of the end of this season. It seems like Ole Miss has been getting off to big runs to start the game, and if they can get up big on Michigan State like you did against Iowa State, I mean, we saw there's not really coming back from that. I mean, if Ole Miss can get up on you by 20, Iowa State tried it at the end of that game and brought the game back down to I think 11 or 13, close to the end there, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen here?" And then Ole Miss make a couple more shots. Game's pretty much over after that. Not enough time left. Like Chris Beard said, sometimes you don't lose, you just run out of time. So I guess that's what happened there. But it seems like this is an Ole Miss team that's motivated. I mean, maybe it's Tim Doyle, maybe it's the fact that you came in as a 6 seed. I don't know what it is, but yeah, if you haven't got the chance to check out any of those videos online, they're hilarious. Padula tweeting at Tim Doyle at whatever his name is. You got Chris Beard in the locker room asking where Tim Doyle's at. You got Juju chirping at him in the locker room. Tim Doyle actually comes on the CBS Sports show afterwards and puts the I'm dumb handkerchief in his pocket. So it's just been a series of events for Tim Doyle and Ole Miss, and maybe he'll get to Oxford soon and get in that dunk tank like people want him to. But it's going to be a historic weekend for Ole Miss if they can win against Michigan State. Never been to the Elite Eight for this Ole Miss men's basketball team. Last time in the Sweet 16 was 2001. That was 24 years ago at this point when they lost to Arizona in that matchup where Arizona made it to the Elite Eight. Chris Beard's been to the Elite Eight twice. He was a runner-up with Texas a couple years back and also made it to the Elite Eight with them before going to the championship round with them when they lost to Virginia in that game. So, I mean, Chris Beard's been in this situation, like Zach said. He had, if you watch him on the sideline, he's cool, calm, and collected. It did seem at times, I mean, throughout March, we've seen Chris Beard get up out of his seat, and like Zach said, it's kind of out of the blue when he does it. I mean, you don't see a lot out of that. When he gets up out of his seat, that's when he's really into the game and he's about to probably tear into some players or tear into the referees. I mean, I remember early in that game last night, Chris Beard gets up off his seat and he gets up on the sideline, and it seemed like the referee was trying to back him up at times. You see, I think it was Jamin Brakefield who was sitting down trying to pull Chris Beard back, trying to be a get-back coach. But this is a fired-up Ole Miss team right now. And I think the question that I want to leave you guys with is, how important is this Sweet 16 berth for Ole Miss? How important is it for them to win this, to make this program history for them? And then the big thing for me, too, is can Dia continue to be consistent for Ole Miss? Chris Beard said it all year. When Dia's playing at the top of his game, Ole Miss is going to play at the top of their game. And whether you're getting one great half out of Dia or 40 minutes of solid basketball out of Dia, if you can get one of those two, I think that's the formula for Ole Miss winning throughout the tournament.
Yeah, last thing I'll touch on here, Cam, in addition to Malik Dia, I think the offense is noticeably more productive when Matt Morrell's making threes, man. I mean, he has had a year that you wouldn't have imagined, you wouldn't have expected, but the ultimate reality is he's been battling this knee injury since I think maybe like a couple of months ago. It's been going on for a pretty long time, and his defense has been outstanding. But we all know Matt Morrell is this guy who can score at will, the guy who was 3 seconds left on the clock last year. Morrell was the guy taking that shot. So he has those capabilities, and when he's making threes and shooting it like he does and he has the potential to do, I think that really propels this offense into that next mode, and it can definitely help them take down the Spartans here Friday night.
Absolutely. And big things to come for this men's basketball team. Like I said, they will play number 2 seed Michigan State in Atlanta this Friday. That'll be March 28th. And then they'll play, the game will be played at 6:09 p.m. I'm not sure what the 09 there is for. That could start at 6 or 6:10, but they had to add that 09 in there, I guess, for just play time between the games. For the television slots. But yes, that'll be on Friday for Ole Miss basketball. And I think that's all we got for you for men's basketball today, guys. We'll get back to you shortly after a short break with women's basketball and then baseball to follow. Welcome back, guys. Here doing a little bit of the women's basketball section now. Joining us, Nya Stewart. She's been writing for the Rebel Walk for about a year now, starting over in the last football season. Just your overall thoughts, Nya. Ole Miss basketball making the Sweet 16, second time in the past 3 years under Coach Yo. Coach Yo became the second coach in program history to make the Sweet 16 twice. Van Chancellor made it 9 times. That was me and Zach were talking about that earlier. It's a crazy number. Van Chancellor starting this program for women's basketball in the 80s and the 90s, and kind of looking back, Ole Miss was probably a blue blood program at that point, but seems like Coach Yo's got this team running in the right direction, this program going in the right direction. Second Sweet 16 berth, like I said. Just your overall thoughts on what this means for Ole Miss and what this means for someone like Coach Yo.
Well, watching them all season, I think they're well deserving of it because they play hard, they play together. Nobody's really out there being selfish. Like they know their roles, so they know who's gonna make the threes for them when they need it in crunch time. We know who's gonna get the offensive rebounds, and I think they feed off Coach Yo because she's a energetic, interactive coach. Like she's always pulling them over to the side, or she's vouching for them with the refs. I mean, your team is who your team is who your coach is, and they just feed off of her energy, and that's how they have this energy at the end of the game to finish strong.
Absolutely.
Nya, I'm going to cut into your Cam. You played college basketball yourself, correct?
I did for 3 years, yes.
Yeah, so I'm just curious. Ole Miss is basically playing a road game against Baylor. What are the challenges when you're playing in a very hostile environment?
Yes, road games, they can get crazy because you have the student section and you have the parents, you have the fans are just going crazy the whole time. They have their band, everything, everybody's against you. So don't expect anything going into a road game. So I feel like just throughout the whole season, even at Baylor, this March Madness, they're hosting. They did already played a game here, and now they're trying to make it to the Sweet 16. This is the last game that they're going to play at their house. I know it was tough. So that was pretty big for them to come out with the win.
Absolutely. And Ole Miss wishing they would have hosted. And Coach Yo took to Twitter yesterday, and with the 5 seeds kind of winning across the board yesterday in the Women's March Madness tournament, Coach Yo was like, well, maybe the 5 seeds shouldn't have been 5 seeds and they should have been hosting. Ole Miss did go on the road. Maddie Scott got on the mic, like we said last week, got on the mic and said, you're packing your defense with them. I asked last week, can Ole Miss carry this defense throughout the tournament, and can defense continue to carry this team throughout the tournament? They get a huge win against Ball State. They went down 7-0 early in that game, stormed back in that game, never trailed after that, led by 29 at one point, 2 double-doubles in that game from Kennedy Todd Williams and Star Jacobs. They dominated in the paint. Ole Miss dominated on the offensive boards, won that game to move on to Baylor. And that moves me into Baylor. It was a big first quarter for freshman Sierra Chino. It seems like that who they were talking about the whole time on the broadcast. It's the effort from Sierra throughout that game. Sierra talked about in the press conference afterwards, stepping into the spotlight for Ole Miss, saying that she didn't want to give up on these seniors yet. She wanted to keep playing with these seniors. Now, from your personal experience playing basketball, just what is that experience like when you're playing with a group of seniors and you're an underclassman and you want to keep playing with these girls?
And you want to do it for them. Like it might not be your last game, it might not be your last time, but it's your last time playing with them. And you know everything that they give in practice, just the insides of it. So you just want to play for them and you don't want to go home. I love Sierra's game. Like she plays hard all the time, and Coach Yo talks about it and we see it. So I think, and her having that relationship with Madison Scott, going under her wing, I think she wants to continue playing. I think they want to keep going further, making history. So she was everywhere. And it looked like she really came to play.
Absolutely, Nya. And a couple more players, in addition, Maddie Scott and KK Deans really look to step up down the stretch. Just how important is their leadership, and How far can that veteran presence take Ole Miss in this tournament?
It's really important, and I feel like it can take them far because no matter how many shots they miss, no matter how many mistakes they make, they keep going, they keep pushing. And even sometimes, like you saw on the camera saw them bringing their team together, saying stuff, just keep encouraging them, and down the stretch, making sure they have these little notes of like, hey, we're letting them foul us, hey, we're not letting them foul. Like, they just talk to each other, they communicate well, and they've been here before, so they know what it takes. So I feel like they have great leaders.
Absolutely. And it was a big game for the Ole Miss offense, especially in the second half. It was a 43-point surge in the second half for the Ole Miss offense. I mean, not a great first half. It was a solid first quarter for that Ole Miss team. Really solid defensive quarter for both teams, Baylor and Ole Miss in the second quarter. Baylor did take a lead with a 13-2 run for over 7 minutes. Ole Miss didn't score in the final 5 minutes of the first half, kind of going downhill a little bit for Ole Miss. The Waco crowd started to get into it a little bit. And then the second half comes along, third quarter comes around, Ole Miss starts to hit a lot more shots, whether it was Maddie Scott, Kenny Todd Williams, Star Jacobs, whoever it was. Everyone was hitting shots. And then KK Deans with 11 points in the fourth quarter down the stretch for Ole Miss. I mean, she was getting physical out there. You saw her and one of the Baylor players tie up with one of each other and get in each other's faces. Referees got to split them up. Coach Yo was out there splitting them up. Coach Yo explained after the game that she loved the intensity from the Baylor players, Baylor players making shots and staring her down, going back down the court. It was an all-around just tough performance from both teams, I feel like. And Ole Miss is going to have to carry that into this one-seed matchup against UCLA. UCLA, one of the best teams in the country. They're a one-seed for a reason. They got one of the best players in the country in Lauren Betts, who's 6'7". She averages 19 points a game, 9 rebounds a game. Now, I know you might not know a lot about Lauren Betts, but what is it like going up against a player with that type of size and just being able to play against one of the best players in the country and not just get shell-shocked when you're on the floor with them?
So when you're on the offensive end, you have to utilize the pump fake. You have to know that she's going to try to block everything. You have to pull up for the jumper. So you know she's not really going to allow much inside. So you have to do other things. You have to box her out to get that rebound, everything. And on the defensive end, you just have to stay solid. I think they might try to double her when she gets the ball. I don't really see how good of a passer she is out of the double team, but you're going to have to work on both ends.
Nya, really the last question I have for you. So obviously shooting free throws it's a huge part, especially in March for both men's and women's. But, you look at KK Deans down the stretch, just phenomenal. Ole Miss shoots 81% from the line. Is it difficult as someone, let's say, for example, you are used to making a lot of free throws, how much does the crowd and the pressure of playing in the postseason actually affect someone?
With a shooter like KK Deans, I really don't think she was affected. You see how she switched those 6 free throws easy. They were fouling the wrong person. I am actually ranked at my old school #1 in free throw shooting, 80%. I practice that all the time. A free throw, a freebie, I'm going to take it. So I don't really think that affected her much at all. She looked cool, calm, and collected at the line. She didn't look like anything. She was happy they was fouling her. She walked on down there, made her shot. She was getting the crowd hyped at the last 2 free throws. So I don't really think that affected her much. I think she practices it. I think she knows she can make it, and she has confidence in it.
And they're going to need KK down the stretch if they're going to want to get past UCLA. They're going to need her to make big shots. She's been consistent for Ole Miss really just throughout the month of March, especially in big moments. I mean, like I said, 11 points just alone in the fourth quarter. I think she only had 2 points before she just took over in that fourth quarter for Ole Miss. Maddie Scott did come along in that fourth quarter, hitting a lot of big shots. I think Coach Yo said after the game, Maddie blew a layup, but then came down the court after the timeout and was like, I want the ball. I want to shoot this last shot. Maddie Scott gets the ball out of the timeout with a minute to go. It's a big shot for Ole Miss. Just your overall thoughts on Maddie's play and her leadership and just what it takes from a player. I mean, I know Maddie Scott being a fifth-year player, 5th year in this program, but what does it take for someone to have that confidence in their shot, knowing they just missed a layup on the other end of the floor?
Yeah, that's something that they got that I don't know if I would have had when I was playing, but they have a lot of confidence in their abilities to play. Not even just talking about Maddie Scott, but no threes were hit in the first half for either side. And everybody kept shooting. And when it fell, it fell. I mean, KK Deans hit her first 3. I think it was either mid third or early fourth, but she kept shooting it. And so with Madison asking for the ball, I mean, that's just a leader, and that's just knowing like, hey, I'm gonna do this for my team. Hey, I got this, coach. I might have messed up, but next play, it's the next play mentality.
And then I totally lied. This is actually not my last question, Nia. My bad.
It's all
But
right.
keys to the game, UCLA, a lot of hype here. What does Ole Miss have to do to walk away with this one with a victory?
I feel like they just have to stay focused, execute the game plan, and defend. Their defense, phenomenal. I mean, if they play defense, they can get out and run, they can push the pace. And because they have Lauren Betts, who's a bigger post, they can run. I mean, just like Star Jacobs was facing up against Von Lay the other day, get her in some foul trouble, let her sit on the bench. Like, they just have to execute, know that they're going to go on their runs, and we have to go on our runs too. But whoever finishes strong in the fourth quarter is who's going to win the game.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a big weekend for Ole Miss men's basketball and women's basketball. Men's basketball trying to make the Sweet 16 for the first time, trying to make the Elite Eight for the first time in program history. The women's team trying to make it for the sixth time, first time since 2007. Carol Ross was the head coach last time Ole Miss made the Elite Eight. First time trying to do it under Coach Yo. I asked last week, is this team playing with the chip on their shoulder? It seems like they're playing with the chip on their shoulder right now. It seems like they felt like they got snubbed from hosting in that opening round. It's going to be a wild weekend for Ole Miss. I mean, we've seen them play really good against teams like USC, really good against UConn, really good against Texas. We've seen them beat LSU late in the year. This is a winnable game for Ole Miss. As long as you can match up well with Lauren Betts in the paint, I think the rest of the matchups for Ole Miss looks really good. Ole Miss has really all-around size on the outsides. I mean, it seems like everyone on the floor at times is 6 foot plus for Ole Miss outside of KK Deans, but we know how mighty she is and what she brings to the table for Ole Miss. But Ole Miss will play UCLA this Friday, same day as Ole Miss men's basketball. No time set right now. I think there's 7:30 Eastern time or 10 o'clock Eastern time in Spokane for that matchup against UCLA. Like I said, going to be a big weekend for Ole Miss. If you can tune in and watch either one of those games or both of them, I'm sure Coach Yo would just love the support in general on TV. If you can be there in person, Team 50 is going to need the support of Rebel Nation in this. I mean, they're going to the West Coast to play a West Coast team. Last time they did that, they beat Stanford. So it seems like Ole Miss knows what they can do, knows what they're capable of. If Ole Miss comes away with the win this weekend and makes it to the Elite Eight, you got a chance in the Elite Eight against NC State or LSU, two teams you played both times this year. You played a close game against NC State and NC State. You beat LSU in the late in the season. It's really possible for Ole Miss to make it to the Final Four. Big things to come for Ole Miss. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot more crazy things going on during the week for Ole Miss sports, but big weekend coming up for Ole Miss sports. I'd like to thank Nya for coming on with us. Make sure to follow her on social media. Check out her work on the Rebel Walk. And I think that's all we got for women's basketball. That's all you guys got?
Yes, sir, Cam.
I think that's all we got for you guys. Next segment, we'll be moving on to baseball. So thank you guys. We'll be with you after the break. And we're back with you guys. We're going to talk a little baseball now, moving into a different sport for Ole Miss that was also successful this weekend. 3-0 sweep on the weekend against Missouri. Did drop the midweek game. Southern Miss won't talk too much about that. That one kind of a little heartbreaker there.
Hard watch.
Hard watch there. I mean, Southern Miss still ranked ahead of Ole Miss. I think they got moved up to 14 in that D1 baseball rankings. Ole Miss moved up to 15 from 18 after that sweep. So Southern Miss still ranked ahead of Ole Miss, so not a bad loss. You do have a win over them early in the season as well, a bigger win than they had over you in the midweek as well too. So pretty good standing for Ole Miss right now, considering the losses aren't really that bad. I mean, you do have the Southern Alabama loss right now, but teams are bound to drop those midweek games. I mean, you see Tennessee who'd they drop that game to?
Eastern Tennessee State.
Yeah. So that was an odd drop game for Tennessee there. And then they dropped that opener against Bama before taking the series. Tennessee did. And Ole Miss will get to play Tennessee coming up soon. Liam Dolby back in town on Friday night and Andrew Fisher playing all weekend. I'm sure those two probably won't get much of a warm welcome in Oxford, at least from the student section for sure. Maybe a warm welcome from the grandstand fans, but definitely student section will not be too proud of Andrew Fisher and Liam Doyle being back in town. Talk a little bit about Mizzou before we preview the Florida series for Ole Miss. On Friday, I didn't really watch too much of these games this weekend, Zach. Between watching a lot of March Madness,
Right.
I had these games on in the background. I was watching highlights after the game. But 4 solid innings for Elliott. Allowed 3 runs, 7 Ks, only walked 2. They seemed to get after him a little bit once he started to settle in. I think he settled in kind of like that second, third inning, was getting guys out more. And then Morris comes in and shuts the door for 2 innings. Jones behind him, Connor Spencer ending the game for Ole Miss. It seemed like Ole Miss might have was going to try to give the game away there late in that one on Friday, but they end up coming out clutching that one. Furness was really hot all weekend coming off the bench for Ole Miss. Missouri starting the lefty, so Reuter was in that first base slot for Ole Miss, and then Furness coming off the bench when they changed to the righty all weekend. He went 5 for 10 at the plate this weekend with a home run. Furness is kind of coming into his own for Ole Miss. But just your overall thoughts on that Mizzou game on Friday, Zach.
Yeah, it was difficult for pitching, and not only on Friday. I mean, 6 runs is not horrible by any means, but all weekend, Bianco kept saying in his post games how the wind was really pushing out, and you can go and look at all the home runs that were hit. It was ridiculous. But again, I think Hunter Elliott, he just needs that dominant outing that really just puts him back with all the confidence that he has. And it's not that he's been bad by any means. Hunter Elliott's been really incredible in his journey. He's been so cool to watch over the past 2 years. But that outing is coming. I can feel it soon. It's either going to be this weekend against Florida or the next. And it's going to come sooner than later, Cam. It has to. But again, is it time to have the debate for Morris to take the Saturday or Sunday starting spot, Cam? Because this kid's pretty electric, and that's not a disrespect thing to Riley Maddox or Mason Nichols. I'm genuinely curious to get your thoughts because it feels like every time he comes in the game, his stuff is disgusting, man. It doesn't matter. He did it a little bit against Arkansas and really this week against Missouri as well.
Absolutely. And like Zach said, he's electric out of the bullpen. And it's not just 2 innings electric or an inning electric. It's 3 to 4 innings electric. I think he can go 5 to 6 if he wanted to, if he had to be that long relief starter after someone, if Elliott couldn't go a long time on Friday or if Maddox couldn't go a long time on Saturday. And I think at some point, in whether Morris stays this year or goes to the pros, he's going to be a starter. Whether he stays this year and comes back next year, he'll be a starter for Ole Miss probably. Or if he goes to the pros, he's going to get drafted to be a starter. So, yes. I mean, like Zach said, no disrespect to Riley Maddox. Maddox, when he's out there and the sinker and the cutter's working for him, it's good. It's good for 4 to 5 innings. And I think the velo kind of drops off a little bit for Maddox as the game goes along. And the SEC bats start to catch up with it. That's no knock on Maddox. The SEC is a really good hitting conference. I mean, the pitching has stifled throughout the years. Sometimes pitching is better than hitting, but right now the hitting in the SEC, it seems like everyone's batting above 300 at some point during the season. And sometimes when you're not throwing 95 plus, it's easier to hit. It's easier to hit against. And Moore's coming out of the pen throwing 97, 98. I mean, he's going 3 to 4 innings sometimes. Maybe at some point, I'm not the coach, but maybe you go to Morris at some point. Nichols on Sunday, I think, has looked great. He doesn't walk a lot of people. I don't think he walked anybody this Sunday as well. He did allow 5 runs, but ended up going those 5 innings for Ole Miss. And then Will McCausland kind of bounced back after a bad outing a couple outings ago and against Arkansas and really shut the door at the end of that game on Sunday for Ole Miss. Good overall weekend with the bats for Ole Miss. I think it was a 6 home run day on Saturday in the 17-10 win. Last time Ole Miss had 6 home runs was against Mizzou in 2023. That was when Calvin Harris set an SEC record and hit 4 home runs in a game. Calvin Harris was crazy guy to watch. He was part of that championship team for Ole Miss. Sadly, Ole Miss was not very good in 2023, but that was the last time Ole Miss did hit 6 home runs in a game. Great overall weekend for Isaac Humphrey. He got SEC Player of the Week. 4 home runs on the weekend. I believe he batted around 400 on the weekend as well, 13 RBIs. He's been at the bottom of that lineup for Ole Miss for at least 2-3 series now, and it seems like Bianco's kind of liking him down there. I'm hoping that's where he's going to stay down there, and you're going to keep seeing other guys get on base in front of him in the middle of that lineup and allowing him to drive in runs because the bottom half of that lineup, feeding off of that with Furness, Luke Chang coming along, Austin Foley coming along, batting above 250 now. The bottom half of this lineup is coming along for Ole Miss, and I think you've kind of found what lineup you're going to go with. Federico kind of dropped off a little bit in SEC play, expected. I mean, he's a true freshman, but he's still consistent. He gets on base every game. He drops down to that 5th or 6th spot in the lineup. Luke Hill gets back into that leadoff spot where he's kind of born to be at. He swings at first pitches and gets on base. And then Mitchell Sanford and Moorman right after him. I mean, Mitchell Sanford and Moorman, I mean, I know Moorman, big strikeout guy, but those two guys swinging it a lot better than I thought they were going to be swinging at this point in the season. I really thought this is where Isaac Humphrey was going to be at this point in the season, and he showed me that he can be better than that. So I think just the overall transfers brought in for Ole Miss right now and the top half of that lineup can carry this team a long way heading into a weekend where you're facing a vulnerable Florida team right now, Zach.
Yeah, you really nailed it, Cam, but Mitch Sanford has been the biggest surprise for me, and I want to give him all the credit in the world. You know, he played at New Orleans at a mid-major last year, and he crushed it. I think he had the best average on his team, an all-conference player, everything and more. But, you know, we've seen time and time again, is that going to translate in the SEC? Well, you're damn right it is, man. He's been playing great. He played a great game against Southern Miss. I think he had maybe 2 triples in that game, had another triple this weekend, gets on base really fast. It's just kind of trying to develop that glove in right or left field, wherever that corner outfield spot may be. And the similar things with Mowerman. I thought he struggled against Arkansas. Didn't have a great game against Southern Miss, but sort of bounced back, got a home run or 2 this weekend, found his rhythm, and he's putting the bat on the ball more. So those 2 guys have been great. You got to keep it coming. And then the last note I had, which we briefly touched on, Austin Foley appears to be that starting guy, the catcher who has a lot of pop to his swing. The guy hits a lot of homers, but now he's starting to drive the ball a little more between the gaps. And Cam said it perfectly. You know, it took the words out of my mouth, but this lineup is finally starting to get its groove with Federico moving down. I love that. Take some pressure off the kid, even though he's still really, really good. I like him being at the bottom. And same thing with Humphrey, man. We saw how effective he can be and how he can sort of be the middleman from moving the middle of the lineup to the bottom of the lineup, swinging it back up to the top, all with some rhythm and groove to it. And we touched on it a little bit, but Florida has gotten absolutely manhandled by 2 top 5 ranked teams. I don't want to, you know, take any respect away from Florida's program. You know, they went to Tennessee and hosted Georgia, 2 top 5 programs here. And I'm not going to lie to you, they got their asses kicked, Cam. If you guys want, please go look at the scores. Really just not good. One of the games against Georgia was 17-2. The other was 15-4. That was a Saturday and Sunday matchup. So they're struggling, but that means they're going to be hungry and they're going to come ready to play. So it's an opportunity for Ole Miss to, again, prove that they're a top 25 team who can handle opponents that they're better than.
Absolutely. And that brings me to my question, is Ole Miss catching Florida at the right time? Like Zach said, it can't jump to conclusions right now. They have been getting beat up on by some really good baseball teams, Florida has been. But it seems like you're catching them at the right time. You're coming back home to Swayze in front of the hometown crowd. Probably not as big as a crowd with Sweet 16 being in Atlanta. Probably a lot of fans going to be in Atlanta for that. But Ole Miss is going to have that home crowd this weekend against a struggling Florida team. And then going back, last thing on the weekend against Missouri, they trailed in every game this weekend against Missouri and bounced back. I mean, I know Missouri not the greatest team in the SEC, but you were trailing at some point in every game this weekend, and you come back. Florida might do that to you this weekend. They're going to come out hungry. They're going to come out wanting to get that first SEC win. They're 0-6 in SEC play. They're going to come out on Friday giving their best shot at Ole Miss and hoping they can get their first win on the board in conference play. 5.22 ERA for Florida in pitching this year, second to last in the SEC. So 2 back-to-back weeks Ole Miss is playing the 2 worst pitching teams in the conference. Pretty good bats for Florida, batting 312 as a team. That's middle pack of the SEC. Like I said, a lot of teams bat 300 in the SEC, so it's not crazy to be batting 300 as a team in the SEC right now. Probably going to see Aiden King on Friday for Florida. He's a big strikeout guy. If not him, you'll see Liam Peterson. I don't think Liam Peterson started last week for Tennessee. I'm not sure if there's an injury against Tennessee. I'm not sure if there's an injury there for him or not. But Liam Peterson's a big strikeout guy. 42 strikeouts and 9 walks on the season. 2.16 ERA. It'll be him or King on Friday. If not one of those guys on Friday, the other maybe on Saturday. I think they go to Billy Barlow sometimes on Saturday too. And also on Sunday, it's probably going to be Jake Clemente. And that's probably going to be the bottom part of their pitching rotation for Florida. It seems like when they get to that Sunday spot, Ole Miss at times too, at least in the bullpen, you had good spots out of Nichols on Sunday. But when you get to the bullpen on Sunday, it's going to be swinging for the fences after that for both these teams. But really, like I said, really good bats for this Florida team. They got a lot of guys batting over 300. They steal a ton of bases. The good thing for Ole Miss is Foley doesn't allow a ton of stolen bases. A lot of balls don't get by him when runners are on base. I think he's only allowed like 11 or 13 stolen bases this year. Florida steals 39 on the year. They have 6 guys on the team with 5+ stolen bases. They got a lot of guys who hit home runs, but just like Ole Miss too, all those home run hitters for them, big strikeout guys. So I think it's going to be a battle this weekend for Ole Miss. I think you probably should get 2 with the vulnerable Florida team right now. I don't think it's the end of the world if you drop this series, but I think you're in trouble if you get swept in this series.
Yeah, you definitely need, in my opinion, you got to take 2 here. Florida has not looked great against Tennessee and Georgia. I just talked to you guys about that. And if you want to compete with those Tennessee-esque programs at this point of the season, you got to go and beat down the little guys of the conference. And right now, Florida's playing like one. And I mentioned it, but you did a great job doing it against Mizzou. Just got to do it for the second weekend in a row and hopefully take down. Again, this is a really good coach here, Coach Sullivan. Like, Florida's a great program. So you have to come into this game understanding that they're going to be hungry and wanting that win. And hopefully give them the brooms, man. Let's kick them out for a second weekend in a row.
Absolutely. And like I said, I did say on Aiden King on Friday, but Ole Miss, this series this weekend for Ole Miss Florida will be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday game. That first game on Thursday will be at 7 p.m. They will play at home on Tuesday against Memphis. I don't know when you guys will be watching this pod. So we're recording this on Monday night. You might get this on Tuesday. If you get it on Tuesday, Ole Miss versus Memphis on Tuesday, March 25th. That'll be at 6:30 p.m. Ole Miss first game back in Swayze in about 10 days. So see if we can get some Ole Miss fans out there, people back in town, whether you were traveling to Waco or Milwaukee, come out and watch a little bit of baseball in the midweek before you head off to Atlanta or Spokane before going to any of those basketball matchups. Or come back and watch Ole Miss play Florida this weekend like I will be doing and covering Pro Day for football. Unfortunately, won't be able to go to Atlanta. Zach is going to be going to New Orleans, so we won't have anybody in coverages on those. Might have TJ Oxley. Shout out to TJ. He did call Ole Miss men's basketball, being a second weekend type of team back in, I think it was May of last year. So give him his cred, man. Give him his cred. He called this shot. So shout out to TJ Oxley there. I'm not 100% sure he'll be in Atlanta, but I think he might be there at least one day. So be keeping an eye out for his coverage there. Always keep an eye out for TJ's coverage on transfer portal stuff too. He's big on that. Always keeping me and Zach updated on who Ole Miss is going after, whether it be women's or men's basketball. He's always all over that, big basketball guy there. I think that's all we got for you guys today, though. So make sure to tune into therebelwalk.com. Give Zach and I a follow on social media. Give the Rebel Walk a follow on social media. Make sure to like and comment on this YouTube video to keep up with all the Rebel Talk podcasts. And with that being said, make sure to tune into therebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports needs.